Hello, he's coming home. We're with the missing former UEFA official found in Switzerland.
He left his wallet, he left his phone, and he'd left all his clothes. The fearing the worst is always there in the back of your mind, and I was so desperate to find him.
No. Also, the donkeys in the Middle East under threat after thousands of pounds go missing from a Sussex charity.
I am worried sick. I just don't know what will happen to them if the charity runs out of money.
And could old school customer service save the high street?
We don't sell anything. People buy from us. Do you mind if I measure some?
No, carry on.
This is Inside Out for the south of England. First, when former UEFA executive Bernie Ross left his Oxford home last October, he told his family he was going to London to visit friends. He vanished. No one saw or heard from him for 2 months, until a telephone call from the authorities in Switzerland saying he'd turned up in Geneva. Well, a few days ago, our cameras joined Bernie's wife Jacinta as she flew out to bring him home. Jeremy Stern reports.
Jacinta Ross is packing for a trip she hopes will reunite her family for the first time in 4 months. She's leaving Oxford for Switzerland to collect Bernie, her husband of 20 years.
So I mustn't forget his passport, because I've got his passport, which it was given into my care. So I must not go without that, otherwise we won't get home.
Since early December, Bernie's been cared for in a psychiatric hospital in Geneva, and his doctors will need to be convinced he's well enough to come home.
He has to do an overnight, at least one overnight, before he can really be safely discharged, if you like. That's one of the hospital rules. So he's going to spend the first night with me, and hopefully that'll all go smoothly, and then we'll be off on the Friday. Be good.
For 11 years, Bernie Ross worked for UEFA at their Geneva base as head of production, a high-pressure job running TV coverage for some of the biggest matches in football.
I think it probably was quite glamorous. It's certainly on a very large scale, and lots of live TV, which is quite nail-biting stuff sometimes.
But during Euro 2016, Jacinta noticed a change in her normally calm, confident husband.
His mind was racing all the time. He clearly was finding it very difficult to relax.
The tournament coverage was a success, but Bernie's mental health was failing. By the end of the year, he'd parted company with UEFA and was a very different person.
He was very distressed about leaving UEFA, and he would be upstairs still ranting and, shouting at himself and just, banging things, and it was quite scary. We were all very frightened.
Much of 2017 was spent with Bernie in and out of hospital in Oxford, being treated for bipolar disorder. Seen here on his phone at a family event, he made plans to visit his sister last October and simply vanished. When I met Jacinta, Bernie had already been missing for a fortnight.
What would you say to Bernie if you could get a message to him?
Come home, please. We all miss him and we need him back.
Another 5 weeks pass with Jacinta and their 4 children not even knowing if Bernie was alive. His daughter Tilly told me it put the family on hold.
It just felt so normal that he was not coming back and he wasn't there. And it was quite upsetting because I didn't want to be used to the fact that he wasn't there anymore. It was like, oh, I don't really have a dad now.
Then, in December, they got the news they'd been waiting for. Bernie was safe. He checked into the hospital near his old office in Geneva. Jacinta's flying out with just one aim, to bring Bernie home. But on the way to the hospital, cause for concern.
I'm a bit worried because Bernie's had a discharge meeting this morning. He said, I just got a text from him and he said it was quite emotional.
Could that meeting put the couple's plans for today in doubt? Jacinta's made this trip several times in the past 6 weeks.
It's quite sociable, actually. There's quite a lot of mixing, and then they're allowed to sort of go around in the grounds. So that's been his home. Almost feels like my second home. Been here so many times now. But he's been lucky to have such good care.
The long wait's almost over. Bernie's doctors decide the couple's trial day out can go ahead.
No. Right.
So what happened during the 2 months Bernie was missing? In his first interview, he reveals he spent much of his time trying to outrun his illness.
I don't remember much once I stopped taking my medication. I travelled a lot on trains. It was very confused. I found that I can make the simple statement, even though I find it difficult to make right now, that I'm ill. That was something that I, and still do, find hard to accept.
Bernie's always believed UEFA handled his mental breakdown badly. Having made it to Geneva overland, he arrived at his old offices in a confused state, apparently seeking some sort of redress.
I don't really feel able still to talk about that. It's unresolved, and I thought I could resolve it somehow by... what did I do? I delivered note cards with "help me." So most probably the simplest thing is that I wanted my ex-employer to help me, which I feel that they haven't done.
Are you okay?
Can we stop for a bit?
Sure.
UEFA told me they're glad Bernard's out of hospital, but declined to be interviewed on what they say is a private family matter. For the past 6 weeks, Bernie's world's mostly been limited to the hospital grounds. Strolling with Jacinta is a big step for both of them.
He was completely incapable of going outside when, at the beginning of his stay in the hospital. He couldn't even have gone out of the building. So it's quite a big thing for him just to be out. The wind can change direction quickly and push the fountain's water back on the jetty, making it very slippery.
140 metres high.
I do feel quite scared of the responsibility of being completely responsible for him and his safety, I suppose.
With their 24-hour trial outing deemed a success by doctors, Bernie was formally discharged on Friday morning. He and Jacinta are now focusing on their future as a family.
It's strange emotions, mixed, I think. Just very positive that I'm going home, but I can't ignore what's happened and what I've gone through and what I've put people through. I think now, with a bit more clarity, having got better a bit, I can see that, yeah, I put them through a lot, and that's not fair.
It's a big step. It's another big step and another chapter. So I think we're all a bit worried about what lies ahead. I think everyone's a bit apprehensive. This is just a dare to time, really.
Jeremy Stern.